millions of people, trains are a regular reality to face. They can be noisy, smelly,
Wir haben hier in Ulm einen alkoholisierten Mann.
lengthy,
En raison d'un problème technique, notre train partira avec un retard d'environ 5 minutes.
stressful, and even boring. For those who aren't familiar with railways, trains are a silly invention for geeks who do not have a driving licence. While there is clearly a mission to make trains attractive again, this podcast is embarking on it. Welcome to Dear Railway. Hello everyone, and welcome to Dear Railway, a podcast with quirky stories, useful tips and random facts about trains, railways, but also travel and transport in general. My name is Jordan Girardin, I'm a historian of travel at the University of St Andrews, and I'll be a conductor, if I may say, today and for the rest of the series. We're going to meet every Sunday night, usually around 6pm UK time, with a different theme and a different approach every week. So, why podcasts on railways, and why should you listen? And by the way, if you're still listening after 1 minute, well done, you've done the hardest part. Well, really this includes two questions. Why are railways, and why in the shape of a podcast? It happens that I particularly love railway travel. It's something that started as a quirky anecdote about me that people would find out about, a few months after getting to know me, and it quickly became one openly admitted aspect of my personality. I was teaching at a summer school a few months ago, and this was pretty much the first fact that I mentioned about myself. It really went like, hi, I'm Jordan, I love trains. It sounded a bit like a support group, but, I just figured that this was something people could pick up on if they wanted to. They didn't really. So the question is, why do I love railways? Why do I feel the need to talk about trains in a podcast? Well, I had something ready before I started recording this. I had a text that I was going to read, some kind of romanticised version of my childhood and why trains matter so much to me. But really, it's not about the past here, it is about the future. I do believe trains are part of the future. The hottest and most crucial issues of the 21st century could potentially be solved, at least partially, by the development of trains. I'll take global warming, for example. Reducing mankind's footprint on our environment is one of the most crucial questions. Travelling by trains is most definitely an effective way to reduce carbon emissions and instead travel in a clean and quiet way, something that is at least cleaner and quieter than cars. So at the centre of the way we move, the way we live, there could be trains. Cities as well. Cities are expanding. The world's population is growing. We can no longer offer cars as the only reliable alternative. We need better forms of mass transportation, and railways have always been there to successfully move thousands of people at the same time. We also need to improve the way we build our cities, the way they integrate within a wider landscape and environment, the way we build houses, tower blocks, etc., etc. And trains need to integrate within those developments. I'll also need to talk about the mighty C word, the commute. Our modes of living are changing. Distances are shrinking. Couples, families, friends do not always live at the same place. So we need a way to go from one place to another, a way to find alternatives to being away from our loved ones, or at least to be somewhere where our work isn't. So travelling on a daily basis has to become something that is easy again. It's not easy now. Commuting is sort of a taboo word, and we need to try to make this work again. So for all these reasons, we need to put trains back into our lives, make them exciting, appealing, and I think this is what this podcast will be attempting to do, trying to put the culture of trains back into our lives. Not see trains as just this really annoying way of moving, this, as I said earlier, this smelly, noisy, sometimes delayed way of moving, but something that is attractive, something that's seamless, something that can really enhance your free time. The other question is, are railways for everyone? Can we really promote public transport while cars can still take us to more places? The truth is, and that's the main issue I believe, because trains are not seen as a reliable and realistic mode of transport, politicians and citizens have abandoned trains for the past 50 years. But trains still appeal, more than ever actually, to all people in our modern society. Are you a student going from your hometown to your university town? Are you a self-employed worker and cannot afford to lose an hour of potential work? Are you a young parent and wish you could properly entertain your kids during a long trip? Have you just met up with your childhood friend and would love to share a drink and a snack while on the go? Are you an aspiring YouTube travel vlogger but you don't have a travel buddy who can film while you drive? Do you love podcasts, but you wish you could focus on listening to them or watching them? Are you a bookworm, a photographer? Are you busy and wish you could have a nap between your point A and your point B? Are you visiting a country that you absolutely don't know and can't even read the street signs? Are you a cyclist and just want to get away to start a new route elsewhere? Do you love geography and looking at the landscape? Are you heading to a party and you know there might be booze? Do you want to catch up on the latest Game of Thrones, but damn it, you need to head to work? Trains are here for all the situations. At some point we could all benefit from sitting back on a comfortable train seat and take back that free time to do what we really love. What I love is being on trains. I'm not asking you to have the same passion. I'm just telling you that train travel actually reflects our daily lives, and it's time to highlight that again.
Ladies and gentlemen, in a few minutes we will be arriving at Dijon station. You have a connecting train to Metz at 19:05.
But why a podcast as well, you may ask? Surely YouTube would be a better catch for this. You know, I could show pictures of amazing landscapes. I could show how quirky a train may look. And that's true. There are lots of different railway channels on YouTube and travel vlogs, and this is something maybe in the future I will be doing. But so far, I want to focus on the experience. I want to focus on some tips. I want to focus on some quirky stories, some actual anecdotes that happened to me. And I believe the storytelling, the storytelling format at the moment for spoken words, for focusing on content, is a podcast. And it isn't really going to be a long podcast. 10 minutes is all I'm asking for, really. According to the Office for National Statistics, the average daily commute in the UK is 57 minutes long. So I hope you won't mind spending 10 minutes together every week. So, what are we going to cover throughout this series? Well, each week should be pretty different. Some weeks we might focus on one particular rail journey that I recommend. On other weeks we'll tackle concepts and issues related to rail travel. Some other weeks we'll take you up and down the UK and across Europe to just show you great ideas for travel. Not always just on rail travel. Really, we'll come up with itineraries that make you want to get on your next train and get travelling and get exploring. And if you want to be part of this journey, you're more than welcome. So far, this is just me, Jordan Girardin, but I would love to have other contributors to this podcast. People who want to write their own stories and tell them, or people who've travelled fantastic railways and who have great tips to share with us. This is meant to become a community of travellers, whether you like trains or not. If you have the travel bug, please join the team and get in touch. So, in the next few weeks, we're going to talk about different things, as I said. Next week, we'll be talking about my personal commutes between Edinburgh and St Andrews. So I live in Edinburgh, I work at the university in St Andrews. It's an interesting commute, not always very calm and quiet. It's something that can be a bit eventful, and I'll get to explain that and reflect on commuting in general and how we can make it a success. Then in the next few weeks, we'll talk about particular itineraries that I've been on. So, just before we wrap it up, let's explain the title, Why Dear Railway? It sounds a bit like the boring start of an equally boring love letter to railways. Well, that's not quite what I intended here. But speaking of boring, I was thinking of calling this podcast the Railway Monologues, but, you know, I have a sneaky feeling the temptation to download this would have been quite mild. So, yeah, 3 reasons why this is called Dear Railway. First, yes, it is true, I like railways. Railways are dear to me, and I want to transfer that to you. It will not often be in the shape of an actual journal, but very much the spirit of this podcast will be to offer a particular vision, a particular personal vision, a bit like a travel source, like a travelogue. Second, there is a mini pun, or at least a double meaning. Yes, railways are dear. Train travel is expensive. Cars often offer a cheap alternative if you divide the cost, like the cost of petrol by the distance driven, at least. But in this podcast, I want to offer as many tips as possible to show you cheap passes, great combinations, ways to travel comfortably on a nice train without the worries linked to driving, but also without any financial pain. Finally, railway is in the singular form. Yeah, Europe and the world in general is one long rail, one long piece of iron. Yes, you could technically travel in one go from Wick in Scotland to Vladivostok, from Lisbon to Singapore. Rails are all connected to each other, and therefore it is the ambition of this podcast to show you this great panel of opportunities to get you off to your nearest station as soon as possible. Thank you very much for listening. I'm really excited to have you back next week for our first real episode. In the meantime, bon voyage. You've been listening to Dear Railway, a podcast by Jordan Girardin. The opening and closing soundtrack are by Lee Rosevere. The main background track that was played throughout the podcast was recorded on the TGV from Paris to Dijon just before reaching Dijon. For more information, you can follow us on Twitter at Dear Railway, or you can follow me personally at Jordan Girardin. See you next week.